I'm Susanna Liller, and welcome to my video series about the heroine's journey. It's time to find your happiness. Today, we are going to look at something that I've been discovering and I'm really excited about, and it's called The Virgin's Promise. And it's based on the reading I've been doing and studying on the book by the same name, The Virgin's Promise, Writing Stories of Feminine, Creative, Spiritual, and Sexual Awakening. It's written by Kim Hudson. So the whole topic intrigues me because what Kim tells us is that, yes, she acknowledges that there's a hero's journey that has so been well articulated by Joseph Campbell and others, but within that framework, in a larger system of the journeys we take as individuals as we grow and develop, there is another one that's a more feminine journey, and she has detailed it for us. And this is a two-part video series in that I'm going to talk, sort of lay the context for what this particular model is that Kim has explained and developed. And then the second part of the series will be more about seeing your own life in the framework of the Virgin's Promise. So it starts with a question. And it's a question that she has found, and I have found many women ask: who do I know myself to be, and what do I want to do in this world separate from what everyone else wants of me? And I'm wondering if you found yourself asking this question, because I've asked it of myself more than once because of my tendency to accommodate to others. And the women that I coach ask it: what is it that I want of myself? Who's the true me? How do I get that authentic me into the forefront? And so she asks us if we are, in fact, a virgin on this Virgin Promise storyline. And no, I'm the mother of two. I'm not a virgin, but what a virgin is dependent. She starts out in her ordinary life as very dependent. And what she's really on is a quest, a desire to be true to herself, which is different from a hero's quest of going out there and conquering. This is more about being internal, which I find is so often where women need to go to get in touch with their own inner knowing, being internal on a quest to know themselves and bring that out into the world more than going externally. So what is this? It's based on an archetype. And what's an archetype? And again, I'm still learning too, but Carl Jung, the psychologist, really taught the world about archetypes. And he said they live in our collective unconscious. There are patterns that we identify with, themes that we relate to and engage with throughout humanity. We have inherited them when we were born. It's part, again, of our collective inheritance. And so when we hear certain themes like the hero's journey, like the sage, the prophet, the fool, we have an immediate sense of what people are talking about. And so what Kim tells us is that it's the same for the virgin, an innocent, dependent person. And so she actually is a screenwriter. And so many of the people that develop these models are people who write, like Christopher Vogler, who developed his wonderful book, The Writer's Journey, again, using these themes, these archetypes, to help writers write engaging stories. And And when they are filled with archetypes, something that we all can identify with, it makes it even more engaging, really draws you in. So archetype is a common theme, a pattern. And so she was in a script writing class, one of her first, I think maybe the first. And a Jungian psychologist came in and talked to them about archetypes and said, okay, let's brainstorm them. If they live within all of you, and I think she said there were 100 people in the class, let's brainstorm what they are, what you identify with. And let's start with early, young life for a man and a woman, middle-aged or at their prime for a man and a woman, and then what will be the names for the elderly man and a woman. And also every archetype has a positive side and a shadow side, a light side and a shadow side. So he asked them to just come up with what would you call them? Again, to illustrate they live within us and we can all identify with the same things. So they did it, they brainstormed. And so for the feminine archetype, for the light side, what they came up with for the early young woman, princess, virgin, maiden, you've probably heard those terms before. And then, okay, he said, what's the shadow side of those? Whore, victim, prostitute. And then he said, let's go to the masculine. Young, youthful, masculine archetype. Hero, adventurer, liberator. And now masculine archetype, the shadow side, coward, bully. And I believe as I said those words, just like Kim Hudson in that class with all her colleagues, they could recognize and know what they were talking about when they said maiden, victim, adventurer, coward. You get a picture in your mind. Then there's the middle-aged, the sort of male and female in their prime. So for the female, mother, goddess, shadow side of that, femme fatale, wicked stepmother, perhaps. This is what they brainstormed, and this is taken from her book. Light, positive for middle-aged male, lover, king, warrior. And then the shadow side of that, tyrant, dictator, destroyer. And then finally, they all grow old, these archetypes. And what's the elderly image terms for a woman who's reached her elder years? Crone, fairy godmother, trickster. And then shadow side, hag, lecher, thief. And then masculine elder, light, wise man, benefactor. And then again, the shadow side, miser, hermit. So they proceeded to do all this brainstorming. And then the instructor said, okay, again, this was about script writing. So let me share with you what the story would be. What's the storyline for that masculine archetype, for those names that you just gave me? And they gave them more. And he also made the point of there's many archetypes. And Jung himself said there's no finite number because we're complex humans. We've lived thousands of years. There's lots of images we hold within. But he said, here's the trajectory of the hero. It starts in ordinary life until he gets a call, which takes him on a journey into the unknown. If he accepts his call, he crosses the first threshold, he has adventures, he's in a new world where he's being tested, he faces crises, and finally, after many adventures which change him and transform him, he returns through the return threshold with gifts, sometimes called the elixir. And these steps are really familiar to me. I wrote my book about the heroine's journey, how a heroine passes through those same milestones. And I always explain it with a heroine's perspective, even though Campbell always said hero applied to men and women to relate to women in their life stories, which is how I use this model. I had to use stories about women, and what better stories to use are their own stories. So, which is, if you've been listening to my videos right prior to this one, it was 3 women telling their own heroine's journey stories. So I know the archetypal story well, and what they say about archetypes is that you can feel their power inside of you, that they have energy. And so people really strongly react when an archetype is speaking to them. And that certainly happened to me when I first heard about the hero's journey. It was a visceral thing that I then had to talk about and share and teach, and I've been doing it ever since. So there was a big piece of this, though, that I didn't know, and either did Kim. And they got to this part in the storytelling and the teaching, and the instructor said, okay, let's move on. And Kim said, what? And she said she was feeling kind of shy with all those people in the room, but she raised her hand and said, what about the other side of the chart? In other words, what's the progression of actions for the female archetypal side of the chart? What about the feminine? And she didn't like the answer that the professor gave, and I didn't really like it either. She said that he said the feminine archetypes are considered more passive and internal, good in novels, but not so much in movies that require action. So remember, screenwriting class, yes, of course, movies need to have lots of action, and probably more so in today's world. Marvel, all those Marvel movies that are so popular, full of action. But for somebody who works as a life coach, a personal coach with women, passive? No, never. I mean, my women that I work with are strong heroines, but they are on a different quest. And the quest is for authenticity and what holds meaning for them, not what others are trying to put on them. So she came up with the Virgin's Promise, this whole feminine journey using those archetypes. She stayed away from the hero heroine label because there's a lot, even now people are saying that Campbell really didn't represent the female. And I feel as she does, and she doesn't take away from what he did, she feels that it's a larger system, that the hero's journey is definitely what we do, and women and men, but same with the Virgin's Promise archetypal journey. And what she says is that Virgin, the name itself, even though maybe we immediately think of a woman, it's meant to be genderless. And she talks about the movie Strictly Ballroom, with Scott as a male virgin archetype whose parents want him to dance the way they've already danced, that there's rules for ballroom and he's got to dance that way, and he has his own style. So he certainly follows that archetypal pattern, the quest for being who you truly are. And so I appreciate it that she makes room for Campbell and doesn't just say, no, he's wrong. This is just another way to look at it. And I'm going to be sharing more about what the steps are in them. She calls them points. I will be sharing what the steps are with you in the second video, but let me just read to you what she says about her findings. I think it's what she has done is opened a whole nother dimension with the journey archetype. That's one that can be very applicable to more masculine, and then this one much more applicable perhaps to the feminine if it works. It depends on the person where they are at the time. But here's what she writes. The story of the virgin or princess has been with us as long as stories have been told. However, until now, a cohesive theory as to the archetypal structure of the virgin has not been formulated. And again, you're thinking of the virgin as a very dependent person, male or female. It has not been formulated as it has for the hero. As a result, the virgin is often reduced to the role she's playing in the hero story. The need for an understanding of the virgin becomes profound when it is recognized that archetypal stories are roadmaps for life. This is what this has been my work, to show that these archetypal stories are roadmaps. They help us. If we know them, it will help us in our own life. And particularly this feminine version, I think, is very helpful. We need to be more than brave, she continues, self-sacrificing heroes. We also need to be virgins who bring our inner talents and self-fulfilling joys to life. And self-fulfilling is all about, what do I need? What do I want? And really satisfy who you really are, the quest for being true to yourself. And we need stories, she says, that show us how to do that. So I am more than excited that this is another way to teach about the life journey, that certainly those hero's journey, very well-known milestones, are something we need to know about. We need to know about dragons appearing on the path. We need to know about the belly of the whale and the threshold guardians. But we also need to know about being caught shining, which is one of the points of the Virgin's promise. So I look forward to teaching you about those and sharing that. Remember, I'm still learning about all this too. One of the things that Kim Hudson says is that she believes this archetype has been dormant within us, dormant within our culture, and that it's time for it to wake up. And I think it could be part of the awakening of the sacred feminine, that which is something else I'm studying and learning about. So I invite you to continue exploring with me, and I hope to see you when I do the second part of this video soon. All right, Sleeping Beauty, it's time to wake up. Thank you for joining me.